Hi everyone, my name is Anya, and today I'm going to be presenting a project that we're doing in the CRCT that is about the energetic demand for the primary production and recycling of metals. So before we dig into the subject, I would like to introduce you to the team involved. So there's you've seen this morning Professor Jean-Philippe Harvey, who's being Associate Professor at Polytechnique Montreal in the Chemical Engineering Department for a few years now. There's also Christian Roblin, who's a researcher at the CRCT. Myself, I'm Anya Bouarab. I recently graduated from Polytechnique Montreal in the Chemical Engineering Department, where I got a Master of Applied Science in Chemical Engineering. And I'm working temporarily this summer as a research assistant in the CRCT. For the summer, there were 3 bachelor engineering students that worked on the project for the summer. So there's Zinab, Iman, and Jad, whom you're going to see mainly this afternoon in the workshop session. So just a little bit of context and why are we interested in this project. A shift to the circular economy is important nowadays for the metal industry, especially for many reasons. One of them is we want to minimize the supply risk that is associated with critical materials that may be, the risk may be increasing with increasing metal demand. This is not only for the decrease of the supply risk. It is also important to reduce the environmental impacts of the primary production of metals, such as resource depletion or degradation and environmental emissions of harmful products. As you can see from the scheme on the right, is that recycling is a really essential part of circular economy if we want to decrease the impact of mining. So one important tool in circular economy is Lifecycle Assessment, which is the methodology that is used to assess environmental impacts that are associated with all the stages of the life cycle. Why this is important and why are we interested in all stages is because it is important if you are just focused on one part or one step of the value chain and that you're trying to minimize the impacts of it, that you're not simply displacing the impacts elsewhere, and overall the efforts that were made are pointless. The problem with that approach, well, the one limit of that approach or the current databases that are available is that no data is available for underdevelopment processes. And this is problematic if you're, say, a company that is trying to develop a new process for recycling or for production, and that you want, in addition to your technico-economical analysis, you want to assess the environmental impact of your process because you want to comply to, let's say, environmental regulations. This will be made difficult using those tools without any data for your new process. Thankfully, some predictions can be made with computational thermochemistry through the use of mass and energy balance. And the hope here is that we can use lifecycle assessment for process optimization at the design stage and material selection in the product conception stage. In the scope of this project, the energy consumption will be used as a criterion for process and material selection, but please be aware that this is not the only one that must be taken into account. So the methodology that is used in this project is basically we do a literature review of all the real energetic requirements for production processes, and you can see an example that is depicted on the right that is just a typical pyrometallurgical route for metal production. And once we get all those requirements, to make a comparison with theoretical calculation that can be performed with PaxAge. A few examples of those will be displayed in the afternoon workshop for both primary and primary production and recycling processes. So the goal here is simply to make sure that the theoretical calculation can be used to make pertinent predictions for, in terms of life cycle assessment, I would say methodology. One aspect of the project is to define a new index for materials, which is the energetic processing index. So it looks like this. It's a gamma FPM. And it looks scary like that, but this is simply inversely proportional to the cumulative energy demand for the production of a metal. It's to make it unitless, we simply divide it by a state property reference that is unique, and therefore it ensures that comparison can be made, and we can always retrieve the quantitative energy demand. So this is specific to, what's important about this index is it's specific to a metal, so we can make comparison between materials. The purity index is really important for further analysis, as will be shown later. And this is dependent on the feed that is used to produce a certain metal. And of course, the process that is used is going to have an impact on the energy demand. So energy is, as I said earlier, will be used as a criterion for process material selection. And most importantly, it is an unambiguous tool for decision making, as all the parameters are here to ensure that we have all the information that is needed for fair comparisons between materials or between processes. So one practical example is what you can see on the figure on the right is from a paper that was recently published by Schaefer and Schmidt. And in there, they were trying to optimize the collection rate for metals in order to minimize the overall energy, which is simply the sum of the primary production and recycling. What you can see here is that the energy for primary production will decrease as the amount of recycling of collected metals increase, simply because we're going to be producing less metal and recycling more of it. The energy for recycling increases, it increases more steeply, and this is normal. It is similar to what is seen as the ore degradation due to increased mining, where you need more energy to extract a certain metal due to less concentration. So the analysis makes sense here only if what you can see is that it only makes sense only if your metal issued from primary production can be substituted 100% with a recycled one. And we typically know that is not true. And in order to make a fair analysis, what is important is that we need to know the purity of the metal that we want to recycle to make sure that we're not trying to replace a metal with something that is actually downcycling, and this analysis doesn't stand. So this is important. If we were to use the energetic processing index, we would know the purity that is targeted, and this would change the whole analysis. Also, it is important to know, of course, the production processes that are used either for primary production or for recycling, as new technologies can either decrease or increase the energy demand and can therefore shift the optimum to the left or to the right, depending on which process is optimized. Another use of the energetic processing index would be its incorporation in a multi-objective function through a methodology that was originally proposed by Ashby for the selection of material. So you would have an objective function that comprises material properties such as density or tensile strength that are submitted to fit certain constraints depending on the product that you want to develop. And what will be interesting here is to add the energetic processing index for the material that you're considering. And you can evaluate either, for example, its cost or through the energy demand, which is a part of it, or to evaluate its recyclability if the process that you're considering in your index is recycling, of course. So this would also go towards the design of universal alloys for recycling, where we can optimize the composition of the alloy to fit the objective that we fix for this material, and to ensure, for instance, that we have somewhat homogeneous composition to ensure that materials can be recycled together and to promote closed-loop recycling. So to conclude, what we aim to do in this project is to develop a tool for decision-making that is unambiguous, and it can be based on both technical, economical, and environmental considerations. This classification index can be used for both comparison processes and materials. And it is important that we have real-world data to build those robust databases in the scope of the development of a decision-making tool. Finally, backstage simulations for primary and recycling processes were performed in order to do this project, and some of them will be featured in the workshop this afternoon. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you this afternoon for the workshop.